8:07 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Coming up at 8:35 this morning, we'll be joined by Larry Kudlow. It's Brian Wilson alongside Larry O'Connor.
Andrew McCarthy joins us now. His brand new book, I believe it launches today, Faithless Execution, Building the Political Case for Obama's Impeachment, is available now at Amazon and at andrewcmccarthy.com. Thanks for joining us, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, gents. Good to be here.
So today's a good day to have you talking about high crimes and misdemeanor. I know that you just posted at National Review Online the column, The Taliban Swap and High Crimes and Misdemeanors. Last hour, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, former congressman, he used that term, high crimes and misdemeanors, having to do with the Taliban release from Gitmo in exchange for this POW with a questionable background. What do you say? Is this an impeachable offense?
Yeah, it certainly is, although what I've been hearing discussed is this congressional notification statute, which is, it's an interesting question whether that's a constitutional restriction on the president's powers or not, but it seems to be quite beside the point. What happened here is the president, at a time when the enemy, the Taliban, the Haqqani network, are still conducting offensive terrorist operations against the United States and against our soldiers in harm's way, actually replenish the forces of the enemy, not just with, 5 rookie recruits, but with 5 top commanders, among their most experienced, most implacably anti-American, and most capable commanders. So that's the high crime and misdemeanor, the dereliction of duty of a commander-in-chief who would put our forces in that position.
So now you again, the title of your book, Faithless Execution, Building the Political Case for Obama's Impeachment. And impeachment is a political act by a political body. What are the political ramifications of actually carrying this forward?
Well, the reason for highlighting the term the political case for Obama's impeachment is that there's 2 aspects of impeachment. There's a legal aspect and a political one. The legal aspect is you have to be able to prove that high crimes and misdemeanors have been committed. And once you understand what the framers meant by high crimes and misdemeanors, which are the political wrongs of public officials in whom a high amount of public trust has been endowed, and that it's not really a concept of violating penal statutes, but more like, the military code of justice's dereliction of duty, conduct unbecoming, that sort of thing. Once you understand what high crimes and misdemeanors are, the legal case is straightforward. But in their genius, the framers wanted to make sure we didn't remove a president unless there was a strong public consensus that we should. So you can't remove the president unless you can get a 2/3 vote in the Senate to basically convict the president on the high crimes and misdemeanors charged by the House. So my point is that unless there's a political case made for the president's removal, where there's public will in the American people that the president should be removed, the legal case is quite beside the point. You can have 1,000 impeachable offenses, but if the public will is not there to remove the president, it's kind of a non-starter.
Well, do you think there's value in going through the process on one side of the equation anyway?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value, and in fact, I think there's an obligation where we have a president who is lawless and who is actually not lawless in the sense that Nixon and Clinton were transactionally lawless, but a president who's actually attacking the governing framework of our Constitution. I think there's an obligation among lawmakers, members of Congress, to explore the possibility of removing him. My only point is I wouldn't go forward with articles of impeachment like we did in the Clinton escapade unless there was a demonstration of public will at least to embrace the possibility of removing the president. If you proceed with this without public will to remove the president, it could end up being counterproductive in the long run.
Going back to this law that's in place that requires the president to consult with Congress,
right?
It seems to me that the law says that he should do it at least 30 days. He should give him 30 days notice. But we do know that these negotiations were going over a number of days, at least 5 or 6 days. We know that
they're going on for 3 years.
Well, yeah, that's true in the larger sense. But I mean, this last round of negotiations was very compressed, and in the last 5 or 6, couldn't they have given them at least that much notice? Would that have mitigated the situation?
Of course he could. He didn't give notice this business about Bergdahl's medical condition is nonsense. He didn't give notice because people were outraged once they heard the terms of the deal, and he knew if he didn't just get it done, that congressional and public opposition to it would have mounted. And he was, for whatever reason, for 3 years, desperate to do this deal, so he didn't do what would have been done to scotch it, which would be the notification. But what I'm saying is that the president has almost plenary authority over the disposition of enemy combatants, and he has significant constitutional authority over the conduct of international affairs with other countries. The Congress can't remove or restrict those powers by passing a statute because a statute can't amend the Constitution. Yeah. So this 30-day notification thing is an interesting law exam, law school exam question, but it's beside the point. We have a commander-in-chief who replenished the enemy while the enemy is still trying to kill our guys in the field. I don't know why we're talking about a dopey
30-day.
Yeah, you make a very good point.
And further to the point, Andrew McCarthy, your book was obviously written and published prior to this POW swap. You built the case for Obama's impeachment, obviously notwithstanding the events of the past 5 days. So tell me, given that, when you've got the, I've got a list here. We've got the Benghazi affair. We've got the president telling Homeland Security to disregard the deportation laws with regard to illegal immigrants. We've got the IRS. We've got the health care law and the use of the executive branch to unilaterally rewrite that law. What is the best argument for impeachment against this president?
Well, I think it's twofold. The most compelling point in terms of the attack on the structure of the Constitution is that when a president is lawless, and the lawlessness is done for the purpose of accumulating power in the executive branch, the reason the framers were so adamant in structuring a constitution that divided powers, so we have separation of constitutional authorities, was because they understood that the concentration of all government power in one actor was the road to tyranny, and that was what they were trying to prevent. So that's the road that we're headed on, and that's why that's so important. And it's also incontestable. Nobody could, with a straight face, argue that President Obama doesn't pervasively violate federal law. To me, the most offensive transaction, at least until the weekend, because this certainly competes with it, is Benghazi, because I take Benghazi back to the president's unauthorized, really unilateral war that he decided to start against Libya, which then proceeds into empowering our enemies, which you had to know was going to happen if you did it the way he did it, not providing security, recklessly failing to protect Americans who were stationed in dangerous places, not responding to a terrorist siege on the United States, pulling this ridiculous fraud that the video had caused the terrorist attack, and finally trumping up a prosecution in violation of the First Amendment against the video producer in order to try to convince people that it was the video that did it. I mean, from soup to nuts, I think you get in this transaction everything that's awful about the Obama administration.
Wow. And really quickly, one of the things I liked about the book so much, Andrew McCarthy, was you do spend a lot of time talking about the framers and the adoption originally of the impeachment clause of the Constitution. James Madison, the fourth president of the United States, had back when he was a member of the House of Representatives representing Virginia's 5th District. If he were representing that district today, do you think he'd be first in line to draw up those papers?
Yeah, he certainly would, because, and I appreciate the kind words about that chapter, which was one of my favorite ones to write, but his point was that if a president conceived of doing the things that Obama has actually done, that would be grounds for impeachment. Yeah. So I think he'd be astonished by what's going on here.
Thank you, Andrew McCarthy. A great book, and yeah, you're right. You can't when you read about what James Madison wrote about impeachment, you cannot read it and not think, oh my gosh, Obama has to be. It just has to be done. Thank you, Andrew McCarthy. Good luck with the book.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
It's 8:15.